multiplying terms with different bases. So we've talked about adding and subtracting like terms, and now we're going to look at multiplying them. And one thing to notice is that when you're multiplying terms, they do not have to be like terms. So if you're adding and subtracting, they have to be a like term. But if you're timesing, dividing, they don't need to be like terms. To remind us of some details about terms, the coefficient is just the big number in front. So in this case, the term 3a, 3 is the coefficient. We have our base. In this case, that is a. And then we'll also have a power. And here I have circled just empty space above the a. But I want to give you another little invisible maths trick here. If you do not see a power written there, there's going to be a 1. Again, it's invisible. We don't usually write the 1 because we'd have to write it over a lot of stuff. So out of laziness, if there's only a 1, we don't bother writing it. And that's going to come into play for us in some of the other examples as well. But I want you to keep that in mind. It's not that there's no power there. It's just a power of 1, meaning there's just one a all by itself. So we've got our base as a 3 and our coefficient as an a. So when we multiply terms together with different bases, what we want to do is times the coefficients together. So any of the big numbers in there will times together. So 5 times 3a would be 15, because 5 and 3 times together get 15. And then if there's any other bases, we just write them out next to each other here. So a, there's no other a's. In fact, there's no other b's or c's or anything, so it just becomes 15a. And basically what we're saying is that there's 5 lots of 3a's. So kind of like 3a just being a, and a, 3 a's sitting around together. Times that by 5, you'll end up with 15 of them. Okay, let's look at the next example. Again, first step, you can just look at the coefficients or the big numbers in front and watch for the signs, right? So I have a -2 here. I've got a 4b times -2a times c. So I notice that the big numbers, 4 times -2 is going to get me -8. And now I've got my bases. And a trick for us here is to write them in alphabetical order without the time sign, because remember, you can write the time sign can be invisible if you have it between 2 letters or between a letter and a number. So here I'm going to write a, b, and c. So 4b times -2a times c becomes -8 abc. And those are still all kind of times together. You can imagine the invisible time signs in there. We just don't write them. So again, that was just the 2 big numbers times together, and then we write out the bases next to them. Next example, -2x times 4y times -3z. So, timesing out the numbers, -2 times a +4 gets us a -8, and a -8 times a -3. So negative times a negative will be positive, and 8 times 3 gives us 24. So the coefficients times together to give us 24. And now we'll look at the bases. We have an x, a y, and a z. They're all different, so we can just write them out next to each other. 24, x, y, z. So again, if the bases are different here, it's quite simple. You'll times together the coefficient, or the big number in front, watch for a negative times a negative, etc. And then once you've done that, write out your bases in alphabetical order. If there's a power with them, go ahead and write that as well.